He was reborn as a despicable slave trader, a side character destined for a tragic end. But armed with his complete knowledge of the game's story, he decides to defy his fate. So instead of capturing the heroines, he uses his saved-up rare items to set them free. What was meant to be a quiet life, however, quickly spiraled into total chaos. Now, everyone believes he's a legendary veteran, leading to epic misunderstandings, an accidental harem, and a reputation that just keeps growing. It's gotten so out of hand that when a blonde girl tells him to go play with Remy, he has to refuse, insisting he's far too busy. The little girl, however, refuses to accept this, shaking him and demanding to know why not. She insists that since Remy finally has some free time, he absolutely has to play with her. Just then, another woman arrives, telling him it will only be for a few minutes, so he shouldn't make such a big drama out of it. So, how exactly did he end up in a situation like this? It all started one night in a dark forest, where two men were arguing with a rookie. That rookie was him, the public executioner known as Master Kai. One of the men orders him to stand guard properly, reminding Kai they paid him well for the escort from the city of Wafer. He even adds that if the hostages scream, Kai's job is to just beat them up. Then, with a sneer, the man mocks him, saying Kai doesn't even look strong enough for that. Kai can only look down at his hands in a rising panic, wondering how things ended up this way. His last memory before all this was of a horrific car accident, one he might not have survived. And then he came to his senses here, in this strange place, with no understanding of what happened. It doesn't take long for him to realize this world is the spitting image of a game he used to play. Worse still, from the looks of things, he has been cast on the villain's side. His attention is suddenly drawn to a large iron cage nearby. Inside are the very hostages his new companions had mentioned earlier. A chill runs down his spine as he remembers a crucial detail. In the game, disposable villains like him were always eliminated immediately. But if this truly is that game world, he knows there's a way to survive. But first, there's something he has to do. With new resolve, he approaches the cage and tells the girls they're all going to escape together. The older girl immediately scoffs, accusing him of trying to deceive them with some kind of trick. And the white-haired girl agrees, pointing out they have absolutely no reason to trust their captor. In response, Kai simply unlocks the cage, claiming it took a long time to infiltrate the enemy and apologizing for the delay. Yet even with the door wide open, the girls are still hesitant to believe a single word. So Kai launches into a desperate lie, explaining that he works for the intelligence agency. It's a complete fabrication, but making them believe him is his top priority right now. He urges them to hurry, warning that he'll be killed on the spot if the bandits discover what he's doing. That's when the first problem arises. The red-haired girl reveals her leg is badly injured, leaving her in no condition to leave. To make matters worse, the white-haired woman adds that she is blind and cannot see anything. On top of all that, the youngest girl, a child named Remy, is completely exhausted and sick. They're convinced that even if they escape the camp, they'll just end up dying in the forest anyway. But then, with the last of her strength, little Remy stretches out a trembling hand and begs him for help. That single act is all it takes. Kai declares that escaping is better than staying, and if they can't walk, he'll carry them himself. He assures them he has a map and knows this area like the back of his hand, so everything will be fine. With no time to waste, he instructs Remy and the blind girl to hold on to him tightly. He then scoops up the injured red-haired girl and begins the long trek through the forest. As he carries them, he's shocked to find this new body is far stronger than he ever imagined. Checking his map, he spots the city of Aldea, marked with the custom name he'd given it while playing the game. If his original game data really does still exist in this world, then that means he knows exactly where they need to go. When the blind girl asks their destination, Kai explains it's a personal hideout he made himself. Before long, he spots a peculiar stone with writing on it and tells the girls to wait a moment. He approaches it, remembering that the password should be the same one he set in the game, and sure enough, the moment he enters the password, a hidden door swings open from the ground. He can't believe it's real. Wasting no time, he starts carrying Remy inside. But as he does, the red-haired girl asks if he's really just an ordinary agent. The blind girl chimes in, noting that building a secret treehouse like this is anything but normal. The truth is, Kai is just as surprised by all of this as they are. Little Remy, her voice weak, asks if everything will be alright now, and even the blind woman admits she's worried. But Kai reassures them, certain that somewhere in this hideout, there must be items he can use to save them. The red-haired girl asks if there is anything they can give Remy to eat. The protagonist opens one of his chests, confirming the system works just like in the game. This means his incredibly powerful items are still here. He offers some medicine, but the red-haired girl scoffs that ordinary remedies are useless. Her jaw drops when she sees the glowing, otherworldly bottle he pulls out. This universal elixir restores health, energy, and hunger, while curing all negative effects like poison. Even in the game, this potion was incredibly difficult to synthesize. He still has 107 of them, which means money won't be a problem. The girls question who he really is, since no simple agent could possess such a valuable item. Taking a deep breath, he hands them each a potion, telling them it's better not to ask so many questions. He asks them to use the items, since he doesn't want to carry 3 people around. The blind girl asks if the legendary universal elixir is real, and if there is one for her. Kai confirms there is and hands it to her. He opens a potion for Remy, and it immediately begins to glow with a brilliant light. In seconds, her skin and face improve drastically. She thanks him for everything he is doing for them. The blind girl also drinks her potion and cries tears of joy because she can finally see again. The red-haired girl takes hers, standing up to find her injured leg has completely returned to normal. He says that when he gets them home safely, he might be a little greedy and asking for a reward. But the girls don't care, simply shouting in joy that they can see again. The next day, he discovers they were kidnapped from the city of Aldea. He realizes it's more than 2 cities away, which means they have a long journey ahead. The red-haired girl gets angry, telling him to complain to his agent friends since it's their fault. Kai asks if they know how to use teleportation or something similar. She says if anyone knew a legendary spell like that, they would have escaped a long time ago. After checking his new body's attributes, he sees that it's average, somewhere between a D and C rank. The white-haired girl says she heard that in the past only one person was capable of using teleportation magic. The white-haired girl says that thanks to him, she can see even though she is not fully recovered. The red-haired girl adds that her leg is fine now, and she's very grateful for his help. She tells him to stop calling her redhead because she has a name, Karen Dior Aldi. The other girl also says her name is Nina Qualier Ansage. And the girl still resting is Remy Tralia Alblera. He thinks that those names are much harder to remember than names in the real world. Karen asks if he can guarantee their safety if the villains show up again, and he admits he can't. She is shocked and asks him why not. He points out that no matter how strong someone is, there's no way to guarantee the future. There is a limit to what his game knowledge can do, and he wants to avoid that limit at all costs. He points out that they don't know how many enemies there are, or how strong they are. If they want to survive, the best thing to do is avoid confrontation whenever possible. After all, each of them only has one life, and when they die, it's over. That's why he will do everything he can to avoid a direct confrontation. He calms them down, saying that this is only what he thinks the enemy will do. Since it's the closest city, the villains will assume he's heading north. For that exact reason, they will instead head south, crossing the forest to a settlement below it. Karen says they have almost nothing, but he reveals he took some money from one of the bandits. He tells them to use it all since they'll need new clothes for the journey. Nina asks why he is helping them so much, especially after using such a valuable medicine. He lies, saying they should thank their parents because he is only doing this because he received orders from above. Just then, Remy starts to wake up, and he asks if she's able to talk normally. As night falls, he says they need to wash in the river, because doing it during the day could get them seen. Nina says that she can just use purification magic. He tells her to use it on the other 2, because he will wash in the river himself. Karen is surprised, saying it's strange an agent wouldn't know such a useful spell. Kai explains that the more they use convenient magic, the more likely they are to draw attention. Nina uses purification magic on the other 2 girls. Meanwhile, the protagonist bathes in the river alone. Once everyone is clean and the plane is set, he puts on his armor and announces that it's time to leave. 1 week later, inside the city of Aldea, a man orders his subordinates to send an urgent report. Meanwhile, having just arrived at the gates, our protagonist points out how busy the city seems. But to Karen, that's only obvious, considering they finally managed to return. Just then, a guard greets the 3 young ladies, overjoyed to see them back safely. While Karen thanks the guard, she's quick to clarify it was all thanks to our protagonist that they returned at all. At this, the guard turns and bows deeply, offering his profound gratitude for saving them. He then directs the 3 of them to wait just inside the gate for their arriving escort. With their immediate safety secured, Nina turns to the protagonist, asking what he plans to do now. Kai simply replies that he intends to stay in the city for a while. That's not enough for Karen, who wants to know if he has bigger plans, like reporting what happened to his superiors. Caught completely off guard, he realizes he has no plan at all and needs to improvise. Fast. So Karen insists he come with them, since her prestige would suffer if she didn't give him a proper reward. Nina immediately chimes in, saying her family would also like to thank him. Before it goes any further, Kai quickly interrupts, insisting that can all wait. Even Remy argues against him, declaring that she doesn't want to wait either. Yet Kai simply turns away, stating flatly that he doesn't want a reward from them. The truth is, he's completely exhausted from having to stay alert this entire time, and it's finally taking its toll. So he just tells them to follow the guard's instructions and wait in a separate room where they can finally relax. Remy still holds on to Kai's arm, but he firmly asks her to stay with the others. As the three girls finally begin to follow the guards, Kai tells the men he'll leave everything in their hands. But the guard from before bows once more, begging to let them thank him properly. Kai insists there's no need since he only did what was right, and now he really needs to enter the city. The moment Kai walks away, the other guards flock to their colleague, demanding to know who that unbelievable guy was. The first guard can only declare that the boy is a monster, something you can tell just by looking. He tried to use his appraisal skill on the protagonist, but all he could identify was an extremely rare item from a level 8 dungeon. Hearing about a level 8 dungeon terrifies the other guards, since only 2 elite clans have ever managed to clear one. The guard captain listens and concludes that, without a doubt, the armored man is an extremely experienced veteran. Shocked, the other guards ask if his identity really wasn't checked, which is practically negligence. But the first guard tells them not to be ridiculous. They couldn't treat someone who risked his life for the young ladies like a criminal. Another guard clarifies that's not what he meant, pointing out how the protagonist used 3 legendary universal potions as if they were nothing. The captain is stunned, demanding to know if he really used a legendary universal elixir. They confirm it. Lady Karen's leg had been a serious problem, yet she was walking completely normally. He simply handed over the priceless medicine as if it meant nothing, which makes him seem even more absurd. Realizing the gravity of this, the captain declares it an extremely urgent matter, ordering his subordinates to report everything to their superiors. And on top of that, he tells them to report to the Hunters Guild immediately. He then breaks it down for them. Karen is the daughter of one of the highest-ranking ducal houses in the nobility. Nina is a descendant of the founding bloodline of the ancient Holy Church. And Remy is the daughter of the leader who oversees countless commercial organizations. Yet the protagonists have been speaking casually with all 3 of them, a trio famously known as the 3 Great Ones. Not only that, he's a proven conqueror carrying an item from a level 8 dungeon. Therefore, the captain comes to one logical conclusion. The man is, without a doubt, a member of the Vertar Peacekeeping Force, a secret organization under the Empire's direct control. Meanwhile, as Kai finally walks through the city, he hates the way everyone is staring at him. He asks a young man if there's a problem, but the man just gets scared and stammers no. Suddenly, a clear voice shouts out that he is amazing. A little girl runs up and happily hugs his leg. A short while later, Karen arrives at her family home. Her father can barely believe she's returned, overjoyed to see his daughter completely unharmed. He asks to just hug her for a moment longer, admitting how incredibly worried he had been. Then, composing himself, he notes that her leg really has been cured by the universal elixir. Karen confirms it, saying the man pulled out the elixir as if it were the most normal thing in the world. She adds that when she tried to thank him, he had the nerve to tell her to just pay him back another day. This man who saved them introduced himself as an intelligence agent, and he rescued all of them completely by himself. Shocked, Karen asks if her father was the one who sent him to save them. The Duke just sighs and says no, if he had connections with someone like that, he would have gotten the elixir for her a long time ago. He speculates that the only reason for Kai's presence there is because he's an intelligence agent. That's when Karen realizes the protagonist must have already had information on the criminal group Red Freed. Her father agrees, but the question is whether Kai's mission was to capture the bandits or to rescue them, and now they can only hope it wasn't the former. But Karen insists they can't just hope. They have to send an official letter of thanks to his organization. Her father immediately warns her that doing so would be like putting a noose around their savior's neck, as an intelligence agent's identity must never be revealed. Shocked, Karen presses him, realizing this must mean her father knows which organization the protagonist belongs to. He explains that while it's unconfirmed, the only group that could capture Redfried is likely the Empire's direct control unit, Vertar. Stunned, she can barely process the name. Is he talking about the legendary Vertar? This secret organization operates directly under the imperial capital, and is tasked with maintaining public order from the shadows. It's said to be composed mainly of the best and most ruthless treasure hunters. They are, in short, the elite among elites. He even speculates their savior holds a commanding position within Vertar, one with the authorization to act completely alone. That means he only claimed to be a simple intelligence agent to calm them down, and they absolutely cannot betray his good intentions. The Duke declares that they must repay this debt, and their only clue to finding him now is his signature pitch-black equipment, so he orders Karen to fetch Lithia, preparing to invite the protagonist to their estate the moment they find him. For now, the Duke can only hope their savior is a pillar of the organization, whose high rank might protect him from severe punishment, and he vows to repay the honorable man who saved his daughter, even if it takes a decade to do so. The very next day around lunchtime, the man in question is in the city dining hall, blissfully savoring a delicious plate of meat. Making small talk, the attendant suddenly asks if he's the guy who was wearing all that black armor. The attendant admits he was scared at first, but now sees that the protagonist is polite and completely different from the others. Unlike the local treasure hunters who are always picking fights, it's clear their new guest is from very far away. Just then, a knight bursts through the door loudly asking for permission to ask a question. After introducing himself, he gets straight to the point. Has anyone wearing equipment as black as night passed through? In an instant, the protagonist and the receptionist shoot each other a surprised, panicked look. As the knight asks again, the protagonist quietly begs the receptionist to deny everything, promising he'll take all the blame. After the lie is told, the guard thanks them for the information and promptly leaves. The exasperated receptionist immediately turns to the protagonist, demanding to know who he really is. But before he can even answer, a woman from the Holy Church interrupts, asking if anyone in black equipment has stayed there. Now visibly frightened, the receptionist can only listen as the protagonist begs him to do the same thing one more time. Forcing a pained smile, the attendant says that unfortunately, no one matching that description has come by. The woman from the Holy Church thanks him for his time and finally takes her leave. And immediately after she's gone, yet another person enters, asking if anyone wearing black armor has been there. The irritated receptionist can only stare in disbelief as the protagonist once again begs him to lie for him. Once the last person is finally gone, the attendant grabs him, demanding to know what he did to get the three great ones to look for him. A bewildered Kai can only reply that even he doesn't know, wondering if he did something absurd without realizing it. The receptionist scolds him, warning that this isn't something to ignore and that he needs to resolve it immediately. Now truly terrified by the scale of the situation, Kai wonders what in the world he's supposed to do. Elsewhere, Karen reassures her sister, Lifia, that her leg is recovering very well. But she then wonders out loud how they still haven't managed to find someone so conspicuous, especially when they know he was with a child. That's when Karen comes to a sudden realization: the protagonist must be actively preventing anyone from finding him. Her sister calmly agrees, confirming that their father had already told her everything. Lifia understands how her sister feels, but admits all they can do for now is hope the issue is resolved quietly for his sake. This just makes Karen angrier, realizing he lied about the potion being from his personal stocks, just so they would use it without a second thought. And on top of that, Lifia adds, he probably also wanted to hide his connection to such a powerful organization. Karen takes a deep breath, her anger turning to worry as she hopes he won't suffer any kind of heavy punishment for his actions. Defensively, she declares that it doesn't matter how she's acting, because he went all alone to save them. Her sister just laughs, teasing that she never said her concern was a bad thing. A curious Karen then asks when Lifia even had a chance to meet him. Lifia admits it was only for an hour, but that Nina and Remy told very similar stories about him afterwards. In fact, she adds, they both want to thank him as soon as possible and are desperate to see him again. Hearing this, Karen pouts, insisting that she is still the one who thinks about their savior the most. Meanwhile, back at the inn, the attendant confesses that honestly, he doesn't think the protagonist did anything wrong. But his opinion doesn't matter, because rumors are spreading like wildfire, and the search for him is becoming more and more intense. A nervous Kai finally asks what kind of punishment he can expect if those rumors turn out to be true. The attendant warns him that even the lightest punishment would be a ban from ever setting foot in the city again. And yet, despite all this, he advises Kai not to change inns. The reason is that a rumor is already circulating. Anyone who reports his location will receive a reward of 3 million. Shocked by the massive bounty, Kai has to ask, why hasn't the attendant turned him in yet? The attendant reasons that Kai must be an important big shot since the three great ones are searching for him so carefully. Besides, their cautious methods, trying not to draw too much attention, prove he must have a very good reason for acting this way. Kai tries to explain that, in truth, he's not anyone important, but the receptionist doesn't believe a single word. Either way, Kai makes his decision: he needs to put on his gear and leave the city tomorrow before something much worse happens. With his expulsion looming, Kai decides that he'll at least enjoy the city while he still can. His sightseeing leads him inside the clock tower, where he finds a mysterious woman, instantly recalling a game rumor about a hidden character and putting him on high alert. But instead of being hostile, she simply laughs and asks if he knows the man who wears all black equipment. Her question catches him completely off guard. After a moment's hesitation, he cautiously answers yes, admitting the man has become quite a hot topic recently. That's when she reveals that many people are looking for this man, including herself, because she desperately wants to meet him in person. Surprised by her intensity, Kai asks if the man did something wrong, but the woman assures him that he's not being searched for because of any wrongdoing. So then why, Kai presses, are they searching for him? She just apologizes, explaining that part of the story is confidential. Just then, her attention shifts as she looks down and sees that her carriage has arrived. With a quick goodbye, she tells him her escort is here. As she turns to leave, she laughs, hinting that they might make good progress on their search very soon. And with one last look, she thanks him again for his concern. Outside, we see this woman is Lifia, who's delighted that her sister Karen has come to pick her up. Karen is optimistic they might finally find their protagonist, yet Lifia can't help feeling like she's just an extra in this whole ordeal. Her sister quickly reassures her that she's not an extra at all, reminding her that they are both very important to this mission. Changing the subject, Lifia mentions that she just met someone new up in the clock tower. Karen sighs, admitting she also couldn't find any information, and now their father thinks the protagonist has already left the city. At that, Lifia pauses, recalling a crucial detail about the man she just met in the tower. This immediately piques Karen's interest, and she asks for a full description of this visitor. Lifia describes him as a very charming man with a calm aura and a scar over his eye. Her sister freezes, thinking for a second before confirming, the scar was on his left side, wasn't it? That's it. Realization dawns, and Karen screams for the driver to return to the clock tower immediately. A startled Lifia can only ask her sister if she's really sure about this. Karen frantically explains that their target, the protagonist, Ael So, has a scar near his left eye, which means there's a very real chance that was him. She races out of the carriage and up to the top of the clock tower, but he is already gone. Meanwhile, at the Treasure Hunters Guild, the Guildmaster Garag is going absolutely crazy, unable to find a single shred of information on their protagonist. He frantically pieces together what little he knows. A man in black equipment, likely from the elite Vertar unit, who single-handedly rescued the daughters of the three great families from the Red Freed group. On top of that, he somehow captured the entire band of bandits, either by himself or with unknown companions. Since attacking a city under the Empire's protection is a direct assault on the Empire itself, it was entirely plausible for Vertar to be sent in. But to make things even more confusing, someone reported seeing him in the city carrying a child. He was even carrying her in his arms. His spiraling thoughts are cut short when a woman bursts into his office, shouting that they have a huge problem. She reports that someone they believe to be the man they call Absolute Blacks has just entered the guild. Garag can't believe what he's hearing. Without a second thought, he rushes out to the reception area and finds the protagonist himself standing right there in his full, intimidating armor. Struggling to collect himself, he manages a formal welcome to the Treasure Hunters Guild. Garag then nervously asks why a man of his stature is here merely to take a look around. Kai, now completely confused by this reception, can only ask if he's done something wrong. This flusters Garag, who quickly stammers out a no. Internally, however, he's convinced taking a look around is just a flimsy cover for a reconnaissance mission. He then analyzes Kai's relaxed posture and concludes he must already know the guild is aware of his identity. Which means Kai came here specifically to bluff them. A power move that proves he's on a completely different level. After all, Garag himself had always dreamed of joining Vertar, but was never recruited despite his own fame. The members of that unit are true monsters, with strength and abilities that are completely unknown. Oblivious to this inner monologue, Kai says that since he's just looking around, he'd like to see the Guildmaster's office. Garag agrees without a moment's hesitation. He then turns and personally begins leading the way. As they walk, the other hunters in the hall watch this exchange, a palpable tension filling the room. One of them quietly whispers to the others, asking what in the world they think is going on. Another hunter remarks that the newcomer seemed far too relaxed, almost as if he were just waiting for someone to pick a fight. A woman at a nearby table trembles, observing that even their own guildmaster has to show that much respect. And she comes to a terrifying realization: if a guy that powerful ever goes out of control, none of them will be able to stop him. On the street, another young man is sure they don't stand a chance. But his green-haired companion only wants to know who would truly win, the Absolute Black, or that S-rank monster. A short while later, Kai is thanking Garag for his help as the master begs him to come back again, but Kai is absolutely terrified, vowing to never return to a place as frightening as the Treasure Hunters Association. He was hoping to go somewhere less conspicuous, worried that the people looking for him would find him. Instead, thanks to his armor, everyone on the street is staring at him as if he were a murderer. This whole situation reminds him that in the game, the Guildmaster had a rude way of speaking that matched his appearance. He definitely wasn't supposed to be so polite. Just then, a grand carriage pulls to a stop right beside him. Karen leaps out, shouting that she has finally found him. One look at the emblem on the carriage door confirms his fears. It's the crest of a ducal house. An irritated Karen immediately scolds him, demanding to know where he's been hiding all this time. The protagonist simply explains that he was at the lodging house. A fact, Karen points out, that they never heard anything about. Kai asks what she means by that, but Karen just dismisses it, assuming it's some secret he can't talk about. At that moment, Lafaya steps out of the carriage and asks her sister how things are going. The moment Kai hears her voice and sees the color of her hair, he is completely stunned. Leafy apologizes for the late greeting and gracefully introduces herself by name. She explains that words alone aren't enough to express her gratitude for what he did for her, and so, she asks if he might have a little free time that day. Wary, Kai cautiously asks what happens if he says yes. Karen explains that they'll take him to their house to properly thank him. He immediately replies that if that's the case, then he's suddenly very busy. While Karen and Lefia are left confused, Kai is panicking, realizing that acting this rudely to a noble's daughter could get him executed. But in their sweetest voices, they plead with him not to say such things and just give them a chance to thank him. After all, they even prepared a comfortable carriage to take him there. Overwhelmed, he inevitably gives in to their request. Once inside the carriage, however, he looks at the two sisters and can't shake the feeling that he's being deceived. Lefia tries to explain that failing to repay his kindness would be unacceptable and would damage her entire family's reputation. On top of that, Karen adds that there is something she'd very much like to ask him while he is there. She starts by shouting that he's being rude, but quickly agrees to speak normally after he asks. With that settled, Karen gets straight to the point, mentioning the legendary elixirs he used to save them. She asks if he harmed himself by using them, assuming that's why he was hiding out in the city. Having no idea how that could possibly harm him, Kai simply says no. But Karen keeps insisting, offering her and her sister's help if he would just explain the situation. As things get more and more complicated, Kai finds himself completely lost, unable to follow their reasoning at all. He desperately wonders how he can possibly convince them that he is perfectly fine. He decides on a new tactic, declaring that he doesn't regret his actions for a second, and that he's satisfied as long as her legs were healed. He tells them to enjoy themselves instead of worrying about him, because he can take care of his own problems. His grand speech works perfectly. The two sisters are completely enchanted and exchange a knowing look. Lefia even begins to laugh and calls Kai master, saying there are no words for her gratitude. Sensing his advantage, he quickly changes the subject, saying that now He has a request for them. He explains that when he meets their father, the Duke, they must immediately intervene if he says something rude and makes him angry. If they promise to do that, he will not demand any payment for the medicine. Karen is in disbelief, asking if that's really the only price he wants for a legendary medicine. Kai seriously insists he's just an ordinary person, and that authority is what scares him most. At this, Lefia quietly tells her sister that, even for someone hiding his identity, that was a terrible excuse. Karen agrees, noting that the story was very poorly told. Still, she reassures Kai that she understands, but doesn't think there's any way he could make their father angry. With that settled, Karen then asks if he plans on staying in that armor the entire time. Kai looks down at his armor, immediately wondering if it's rude not to take it off. But she clarifies that's not what she meant at all, explaining it just looks very heavy and must be bothering him. Lefia then adds that personally, she would very much like to see the face behind the armor. The direct request catches the protagonist completely by surprise. Watching him, Lefia thinks to herself that the protagonist is a very honest person. And yet, despite being a man of few words, he's incredibly difficult to read. He must be someone who is always on alert, ready to protect them if something happens. Now, she finally understands why her sister has taken such a liking to him. He'd risked his life to save her younger sister, single-handedly overpowering a cruel criminal organization. And despite the enormous debt she now felt towards him, he'd never once tried to take advantage of it. Watching him now, Lefia can't help but laugh. For a man from a supposed secret organization, he's surprisingly nervous about meeting a duke. It's a stark contrast to the usual nobles she meets, who are only ever interested in marriage proposals. But not a single one of them ever paid any mind to her little sister Karen. That's why seeing the way he treats her sister fills Lefia with a happiness she's never known. And while Lefia was desperate to meet him, her sister Karen wanted to see him even more. On top of all that, Kai had chosen to ride in their carriage simply to protect the Duke's reputation. He'd even offered to waive the debt for the legendary medicine, asking only for her help if their father got angry. A cure-all potion worth an entire castle, and he just gave it away. Lefia has to wonder, is there anyone else in the world this generous? Because of all this, Lefia is determined to find some way to keep him in their lives, so she asks how long he'll be in the city, offering to arrange a residence for him whenever he needs. But his only reply is that it all depends on his mood. To her, that must be code for depending on orders, since his very presence can mean the difference between life and death for others. As the carriage door swings open, a full reception is waiting to welcome him to the ducal estate. Stunned, Kai can only ask why they've gone to such lengths. Li Fei explains that this is simply her family's way of showing their profound respect. Stepping out of the carriage, he admits they didn't need to go this far, worried it might cause trouble. But Li Fei assures him that since it was a mutual decision, there won't be any problems. In fact, she adds, if anyone did object, they'd take immediate measures, as failing to show respect is a grave offense. Her intensity is a little frightening, and all he can do is say he understands. As he helps Karen down from the carriage, he can't shake the feeling that someone is about to be severely punished. Yet Karen just tells him to enjoy himself, while Li Fei thanks him again for accepting their invitation. Confused, Kai asks what the two of them are going to do. Karen explains they have to leave for now, since this is an important conversation where they would only be in the way. But in exchange, Li Fei adds, they'll be waiting in the very next room. Should anything happen, they'll come bursting in immediately. He thinks it'd be a huge help if they actually stayed, but he knows there's no choice in the matter. That's when Kai turns to the captain, asking him to hold on to his sword. Without a moment's hesitation, he hands the weapon over. The captain is taken aback, asking if he's absolutely sure. Even Karen is shocked, pointing out that he never let go of it during their entire journey. It must be incredibly important, but Kai just insists, telling the captain it's only natural to be suspicious. Besides, he adds, he's far stronger when fighting hand-to-hand anyway, so he's not exactly defenseless without it. His confidence leaves everyone impressed, and the captain promises to guard the weapon with his life. Internally, however, Kai admits this was no joke. Just as he suspected, wielding a sword restricts his movements, and he could easily see himself taking a fatal blow before he could even react. This is precisely why he's more confident fighting empty-handed than with a blade. So while handing over the weapon isn't an issue, it does mean he's now cut off his only escape route. Just then, the headmaid summons him to follow her, announcing it's time to go in. With his escape route gone, all he can do is hope everything goes smoothly. What they don't know is that his weapon, the Black Sword Dullagand, is one of the Great Supreme Blades, a sword that can never break. On top of that, its edge will never dull, no matter what it cuts. Its only drawback? The wielder's luck stat becomes dangerously unstable. And yet before entering, he tells them that if they're curious, they can examine it under the captain's supervision. The moment he's inside, Karen rushes over to the sword, admitting she's been curious about the beautiful blade for ages. Although the captain is hesitant, he agrees to let her see it. As the blade slides from its sheath, it gleams with the brilliance of a precious stone. Awestruck, Karen asks the captain what kind of fighting style he thinks Kai uses. The captain speculates he's the type to overwhelm opponents with pure speed, all while reading their every move. For a swordswoman like Karen, that's the most terrifying opponent imaginable. The captain then carefully hands her the sword, telling her to hold it firmly with both hands. But its tip just barely grazes the stone floor. And even with that gentle touch, a deep gash is instantly carved into the ground. The three of them are left completely speechless. Realizing the immense power she's holding, Karen quickly hands the weapon back to the captain. He can only stare at the blade, thinking that if it can cut stone so easily without a single scratch, then no armor in the world could ever hope to stop it. But the very fact that he possesses such a terrifying weapon and handles it so easily shows just how frightening he truly is. The captain rushes to see if Karen is alright, and though she's trembling, she says yes. But Li Fei insists this can't be brushed aside. They must report this directly to their father, a decision the captain quickly agrees with. Moments later, back at the estate, Karen tells her sister that she already knew what they were discussing. In fact, she's so upset she can no longer face her parents because she never imagined they would make the protagonist bow to them. Li Fei can see how truly devastated her sister is by this. And yet, she asks if Karen really thinks she has time to feel so discouraged. Surprised, Karen can only ask what on earth her sister means. Li Fei lays it out plainly. First, she needs to answer for cutting those carefully selected stones right in the middle of the street. That incident, she reminds her, still has to be explained. A wave of despair washes over Karen, who realizes she always ends up causing problems. But her sister offers a different perspective, suggesting that maybe she'll be praised as a swordmaster instead. Realizing there's no escape from the consequences, she takes a deep breath. Karen then vows to become an exemplary daughter and make up for all the trouble she's caused. That's when Li Fei reminds her of what the protagonist himself said: she needs to enjoy life to the fullest and has no time to be depressed. Hearing his words again, Karen's mood instantly brightens. On top of that, her sister adds that she must not forget it was he who healed her legs, likely risking the Emperor's anger to do so. This makes Karen admit she's been wondering for a while now why the protagonist won't accept any reward. He could have asked for titles, lands, mansions, or enough wealth to live in luxury for the rest of his life. Even marriage arrangements could be on the table. Almost any realistic wish could have been granted. A sudden fear grips Karen. She hopes her sister doesn't see the protagonist before she does. She worries that Lafia is so obsessed, she might actually try to keep him all to herself. So she begs her sister to tell the truth, hoping she might at least describe what he looks like besides the scar. Lafia simply denies trying to keep him for herself, claiming she's only curious about him. Hearing this, Karen internally decides it would be better not to let her sister see him at all. At that exact moment, however, the Duke and his wife are feeling an entirely different kind of anxiety. Duke Dagote stands before Shikoku, the man clad in armor as dark as his title, who keeps acting in completely unexpected ways. Dagote just can't understand why this man is being so kind, acting humbly to preserve the Duke's own dignity when it's his family that owes him everything. After all, the protagonist is treating them with the same level of respect they are showing him. And yet, Dagote sees no reason for Kai to be so generous, since he hasn't made a single demand. He also knows the protagonist is in a position where he could demand basically anything, and they are in no position to refuse. The Duke reasons that since the protagonist is connected to the Emperor, he's certainly in a higher position than them, which means he must have some kind of backing they could never hope to oppose, so there's simply no reason for him to act so humbly. Dagote looks at his wife, a new thought entering his mind. Perhaps they are being tested. However, his own impression of the protagonist is better than that of anyone he has ever met. Still, Dagote feels as if Kai is observing his every move and word, evaluating how he, as a duke, handles this situation. If he sends the protagonist away without doing anything, it would severely damage his family's honor and start terrible rumors. That's when he realizes that perhaps he's being led to see his own flaws, because the protagonist has left no openings. Kai used a legendary medicine to save his daughter's leg, leaving absolutely no vulnerability that could bring ruin to the family. The Duke feels pathetic, realizing Kai not only saved his daughter but is now forcing him to face his own shortcomings. However, Dagote decides not to remain trapped by this feeling, believing that meeting the legendary Shikoku is a blessing in disguise. So he explains that what he's about to say involves his family's honor, and begs the protagonist to allow them to make an offer. Surprised, Kai agrees, saying they can do something as long as it's within reason, but the lady quickly asks him not to be so humble, as the honor of thanking him belongs entirely to them. Taking a deep breath, Dagote offers 3 things as thanks: a house, a monetary reward, and the full official support of the Duke's family. The Duke is certain his judgment was right. The house gives Kai a base in Ventale while allowing them to form a connection with someone from the capital. Dagote believes he has finally, after all this pressure, managed to give the right answer. He then suggests that if the protagonist has free time, he would like his daughters to guide him through his new house. Once again, Kai accepts, thanking the Duke for his immense consideration. With that, Dagote asks his wife to take the protagonist to the room next door where his daughters are waiting. She calls to Lord Shikoku and asks him to please follow her. As the protagonist leaves the room, Dagote maintains his dignified, unwavering posture. But the moment the door clicks shut, he begins to tremble uncontrollably. He admits to himself that his daughter was indeed saved by a truly fabulous man. Meanwhile, as he walks, Kai thinks to himself that the conversation was unbelievably intense. But from the landing above, Karen, looking down at him, says that's not what she felt at all, to which Kai can only reply that maybe it was just because of the armor he's wearing. With a laugh, Lafayette tells him he can feel free to take off his armor if he wants. While Karen agrees that might help, she suggests he should try acting a little more appropriately. Confused, Kai asks what she means, and Karen explains that anyone else would be ecstatic to receive such a reward from her father. Of course, Kai insists that he is very happy, especially since he was just about out of money. But in truth, he's completely floored that such a massive reward has just fallen into his lap. If he were alone right now, he'd be celebrating like an absolute madman. Just then, Lifa calls out his name, admitting this might not be the best question to ask. Even so, she needs to know if he's truly satisfied, because he could have asked for so much more. Kai considers her question, while the official supports part is a mystery. A free house and a pile of cash are more than enough for him. He simply says it was an agreement made by the adults, and that the only thing that matters is if they're okay with it. Lifa immediately assures him not to worry, explaining that their family owns several houses, and this one is just attached to the main residence. Karen, however, points out that even so, trying to live in that house alone would be incredibly difficult, maybe even dangerous. Lifa has to agree. While the garden might be smaller, the mansion itself is practically the same size as their own home, which means, Karen confirms, it's far too large for just one person to manage. So she asks him straight up, does he plan to live there with someone, or just use it as a base? Kai explains his plan is to use it as a base of operations, and that for now, he intends to live there alone. But the sisters keep pressing, insisting that a treasure hunter of his level can't possibly be single. A surprised Leifa asks if he has no interest in romance at all, though he clarifies it's not quite like that. That's when Karen tells her sister it must be a case of him not finding anyone on his level, teasing that he's just full of himself. Looking for an out, Kai quickly dodges the subject by inviting them to visit the new house whenever they'd like. The sisters are taken aback. Is he serious? Is it really okay for them to just drop by? At his confirmation, Karen gets incredibly excited, declaring she'll be visiting as often as she pleases. And Leifea isn't about to be left out, announcing that she'll be coming over frequently too. In fact, since she has free time right now, Leifea decides they should all go to the new house immediately. Once they arrive, Leifea reassures Kai that the house is just a symbol of their gratitude, so he shouldn't feel the least bit guilty. But as he looks around at the highest quality furniture, he can't help but wonder if accepting something this magnificent was a huge mistake. He then notices the girls are still standing and quickly apologizes, telling them to have a seat. Karen immediately wonders if he's only saying that because of her recently healed leg. Instantly irritated, she snaps back that she's not a child who needs to be coddled. Yet Kai calmly explains that he didn't use that precious medicine on her just so she could turn around and overdo it. Besides, if a rumor spread that he made the Duke's daughter overexert herself, it would be all over for him. Since she's still stubbornly refusing to sit on the sofa, Kai jokingly suggests she sit on his armor instead. To his surprise, she walks right up and says that if he insists, the armor will do just fine. And to his absolute horror, she actually sits down on his lap, leaving him a nervous wreck inside his own armor. Completely flustered, he can only stammer out, what do you think you're doing? He tries to explain it was obviously a joke, asking if she isn't uncomfortable sitting on a lap made of solid metal. Now it's her turn to get embarrassed, as she insists it's not like she's happy about the situation. At which point Leifa, with a knowing smile, points out that nobody even asked if she was happy. Cornered, Karen quickly changes the subject, asking why he's still wearing his full armor inside his own house. Kai just plays it off as a simple precaution, in case something were to happen. But the real problem is that showing his face to Lady Leifa right now, after the clock tower incident, would be mortifying. In another attempt to change the mood, Kai raises a hand and gives Karen a pat on the head. This only makes her more embarrassed, and she complains that he shouldn't pat her head like she's a little kid. He tells her to just sit on the sofa before he's forced to make her, but her immediate refusal leaves him baffled. Giving up, he changes the subject again, commenting on how bold the Duke was to leave everything in their hands. Hearing this, Leifa turns to him, asking what exactly he means by that. She explains that their father often acts without thinking, and must have simply judged Kai to be worthy of his complete trust. That kind of judgment, Kai concludes, must come from years of experience, allowing him to trust someone without knowing the full story. Karen reinforces the point, after all, why would they distrust the man who used a priceless elixir just to help them? Seizing the moment, Leifea formally addresses him as Master Shikoku and invites him to join them for dinner. When he declines, Leifea realizes he truly does intend to leave, commenting that he must be a very busy person. So Karen asks that if he's leaving the city, he should at least stop by their house first and let them know when he's back. Kai, however, refuses outright, thanking her for the offer but stating plainly that he won't be doing that. Caught completely off guard by his blunt refusal, all Karen can ask is, why? His mind flashes back to the Duke, who offered unconditional help and told him to ask for anything without hesitation. Getting entangled with someone in that high of a position would only bring complications, and far too much pressure. At his explanation, Karen falls silent, her expression clearly showing her dissatisfaction. But Leifea, ever the understanding one, simply tells her fuming sister that there's nothing they can do. Kai agrees to stay in the city for a while to do some exploring, but he immediately remembers there are still people looking for him. Most likely those two influential figures. Just then, Karen starts acting suspicious, as if she's completely misunderstood his intentions. An embarrassed Leifea quickly tries to cover for her, insisting they were just whispering about nothing. After a moment of speechless confusion, Kai realizes they were trying to guess what his hidden face looks like. Mortified, Leifea covers her face and warns Karen that she'll be punished for this later. Karen just retorts that it's her sister's own fault for being so obvious. Trying to regain some control, Leifea orders Karen to get off Master Shikoku's lap, claiming she's in the way. Yet Karen immediately refuses, flat out saying she doesn't want to get off. Instead, she teases her sister, telling her to just admit it if she's jealous. Changing the subject, Kai points out that Miss Leifea probably shouldn't be acting this way. This irritates Karen, who stares him down and demands to know why he's rejecting her sister. He clarifies that since Leifea is beautiful, high-ranking, and nearly an adult, she must already have suitors. While Leifea admits she receives many proposals, she makes it very clear that she is still single. Karen then adds that her sister is actually quite needy, so people get embarrassed and avoid her when she tries to get close. As a horrified Lefia begs her to stop talking, Kai can't help but note Karen is still sitting on his lap. That's when Karen whispers for him to try tapping the sofa, but a confused Kai just asks why. She simply tells him to do it already. Although Kai doesn't understand the reason, he follows her advice. And the moment he does, Lefia gets up from her seat and sits right beside him. Almost instinctively, she moves closer and touches Kai's armor, surprising Karen with her boldness. To break the strange atmosphere, Karen quickly suggests they just continue their conversation. Lefia calmly agrees, saying she would have no problem with that at all. Her confident attitude makes Karen comment that this is the first time she's ever seen her sister go this far. As a final symbol of her family's gratitude, Lefia then presents their crest. She explains that because the symbol is so complex, it will take about 3 days to prepare. On top of that, Lefia adds that on her next visit, she wants to discuss the mansion's management structure. With their business concluded, Lefia and Karen prepare to end the meeting. Karen says her goodbye first, asking Kai to stay healthy until they meet again. Wishing her the same, Kai tells her to get home soon so her parents won't worry. Lefia then formally says her own goodbyes for the day. Moments later, the two sisters enter their carriage and depart from the mansion. Once they're gone, Kai thinks to himself that he can finally take off his helmet. He removes it with a great sense of relief, feeling much more comfortable at last. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Lefia comments on how quickly the time flew by. Karen can only agree with her sister's sentiment. In fact, she admits that it felt really good to be called beautiful and receive so many compliments. Lefia agrees, adding that she thought it was adorable how Kai called Karen by her first name. That particular comment makes Karen a little embarrassed. Lefia then wonders how Kai can be so generous, despite having more fame than anyone. To this, Karen figures that's probably what it takes to be a member of Vertar. Then she starts teasing Lefia, saying the real reason she wanted to stay was to see Kai's face. On top of that, Lefia is still considering the possibility that he's the same person she met at the clock tower. Noticing her sister's thoughtful expression, Karen offers to draw a picture of him when they get home. Lefia carefully declines, pointing out that Karen's drawings are a bit too unique to be a good reference. At the same time, Karen thinks to herself that her sister's drawing skills are even worse. In the middle of their banter, Lefia asks what has suddenly caught her sister's attention outside. Because at that exact moment, Karen sees Kai standing at the window without his helmet, revealing his face for the very first time. She tries to get her sister's attention, only to realize Lefia is also completely fixated on Kai. Upon seeing his face, Lefia knows for certain he was the man from the clock tower, feeling he teased her by hiding it. A stunned Karen asks if that means Kai really was the person she met at the tower. And Lefia confirms it, now absolutely certain he was the one. Karen finds her sister's earlier doubt strange, since everyone knows how much Lefia loves the view from that spot. She reasons that if Kai knew that, it would make perfect sense for him to be there on purpose. This makes Lefia realize Kai might have even predicted Karen's arrival, also he could check on her recovering leg. Karen is stunned by this idea, asking if it's possible Kai had been watching over her from the very beginning. Lefia is certain, explaining that is the only theory that makes any sense, which leads her to believe that deep down, Kai must be a truly kind person. She now realizes he chose his words so carefully just to ease Karen's guilt and prevent her from feeling indebted. In fact, she even suspects his presence at the clock tower was to protect them from any remaining kidnappers. And he did all of this silently and alone, never once showing off or drawing attention to himself. Her thoughts all settle on one undeniable conclusion: Kai is a truly admirable man. Looking over at her sister, she can't wait for the day after tomorrow, because now she has so much to tell him. But Karen immediately notices her sister's smitten expression, teasing that she is the face of a girl in love. She even muses that, to their father, Kai is a man he could never hope to equal. Meanwhile, at the inn, the owner sadly comments that he'll miss seeing Kai around. Kai assures him that while he's not staying anymore, he'll definitely be back for the food. This brings a smile to the owner's face, and Kai confirms that everything they make is just absurdly good. So, the owner offers to use his influence to help Kai find a new place to stay. But Kai explains he already received a house and will be living there for a while. The owner is completely taken aback, asking if he really just received a house. With a sigh, Kai confirms that he tried to refuse multiple times, but the Duke insisted on giving him the mansion. The owner's eyes go wide as he warns him that receiving a villa from a Duke is an incredibly big deal. Kai, however, takes this literally, simply agreeing that the villa is indeed quite large. The owner can only facepalm, clarifying that's not what he meant at all. He explains that a villa isn't just a house, it's a symbol of power that includes the land it sits on. By gifting it, the Duke chose to create a direct connection with Kai, seeing it as more advantageous than keeping the property. Looking at him with newfound seriousness, The owner asks who he really is, but Kai just claims to be a normal guy. A claim the inn owner doesn't believe for a single second. Just before leaving, Kai remembers something and slides a heavy pouch across the counter as a thank you. He explains it's to thank the owner for hitting him, for giving him advice, and for helping him out. Yet, the owner feels a sense of dread, admitting that accepting money from Kai is actually pretty scary. Kai just smiles, assuring him there's nothing to be afraid of. To which the owner retorts that the scariest people are always the ones who say that. So Kai jokingly asks if he'd accept it if the money came from someone genuinely scary. The owner just fires back that this doesn't make the situation any better. Dropping the act, Kai admits he's naturally stingy, but he felt bad for getting the owner mixed up in something so absurd. This earns a half-joking, "You're a nice guy, you know that?" from the owner, and Kai just agrees. His deadpan response completely flusters the owner, who says it was a joke and Kai should have denied it to avoid the awkwardness. It's only after Kai is gone that the owner finally picks up the pouch and is floored by the sheer amount of money inside. He can't believe the sum, thinking Kai must be messing with him. This isn't something an ordinary let alone stingy person would ever do. Meanwhile, at the Holy Church, a girl named Nina reaches out to touch the face of a white-haired girl. But her hand is immediately slapped away with a sharp, "Don't touch." You see, Nina, who had been blind her whole life, had her sight completely restored by the universal elixir. Enchanted with her newfound vision, she can't stop staring at her sister's face up close, much to the other girl's irritation. Her older sister, Marie Qualier-Ansage, complains that they've been through this routine several times already. Nina calmly counts that this is the 7th time, making Marie suspect she's doing it on purpose. Though Nina denies it, she immediately scolds Marie for her rough way of speaking. On top of that, she tells her not to cross her legs, as it doesn't match her beautiful looks. Marie argues that this level of informality is fine, since only family can see her. She insists she knows how to behave properly when needed, and strikes a pose to prove it. Looking at her sister, Marie comments that ever since Nina regained her sight, she's become much more proper and well-behaved. Nina insists she's only saying what's normal, but Marie advises her to let her guard down once in a while. With a clever smile, Nina teases back that for Marie, once in a while means every single day. Watching her, Marie reflects that since regaining her sight, Nina has become more radiant than anyone. She's finally enjoying each day in a way they'd never seen before. Marie's thoughts then turn to the man in black, commenting on how he single-handedly saved Nina. After all, he even used the legendary universal elixir on her completely free of charge. But that's when Nina drops a bombshell, clarifying that Kai didn't just use one universal elixir, he used 3 at once. Blushing, Nina admits his face and his heart were both wonderful, adding with a knowing look that he's exactly the kind of man Marie would like. When Marie asks if the man in black is her type, Nina simply replies that she just regained her sight and doesn't have preferences yet. With a teasing smile, Marie promises that they'll see about that. But she quickly grows serious, warning Nina not to aim for someone like him at her age. She explains that anyone capable of using an elixir so freely must belong to the powerful House of Vertar. Because of that, Nina would face hundreds of rivals if she ever became interested in him. With that sobering thought, the Ansage sisters, ever devoted to the Holy Church, continue on their way together. Now, both of them eagerly await the day they can finally meet the man in black again. Yet 3 days later, that eagerness has turned to pure exhaustion as an exasperated Marie complains about being tired. Just then, Lafia arrives in the rear garden, teasing that Marie is skipping her duties again. Marie immediately recognizes that voice, insisting she's just taking a break, not slacking off. As the two of them settle down in the garden, Marie wonders why Karen isn't with Lafia. Lafia explains that Karen stayed behind to talk with Nina, all while she handles cleaning the grounds. Hearing this, Marie starts to put the pieces together. She correctly deduces their visit has to do with the ducal house, asking if they managed to thank him properly. Marie can only imagine how excited Nina must be to finally meet this Kai. After all, her sister has spent every single day talking about wanting to see him. To her surprise, Lafia admits that Karen is no different. It seems her little sister has finally found someone else to cling to besides her. Marie remembers how Karen used to stick to Lafia's side constantly. Lafia just laughs, adding that nowadays, Karen practically lives on the man in black's lap. And indeed, that's exactly where she is. In fact, Lafia admits Kai's charm is so immense she can't even put it into words, calling him the most wonderful person. Stunned by such a strong statement, Marie listens as Lafia assures her she'll understand when she finally meets him. Finding this behavior incredibly strange, Marie asks if the ducal house gave Kai some enormous reward during their meeting. She insists on knowing the details, explaining that she needs it for reference, since House Ansage still hasn't decided how to thank him. If Lafia doesn't spill the information, Marie threatens to expose her friend's true personality to the world. That's when Lifia relents, listing the rewards, a villa, a sum of money, and a family seal. Marie is floored, demanding to know if that was all they offered after he saved Karen's life with a universal elixir. She thinks the reward is nowhere near enough, and Lifia admits she feels the same, but their hands were tied. The reason, she explains, is that the man in black didn't just fail to ask for a reward, he actively refused the ones they offered. This is so unbelievable that Marie calls it an exaggerated joke, because someone like that simply shouldn't exist. On the contrary, Lifia admits even her own father said something similar, confessing he couldn't possibly compare to the man in black. Marie is completely stunned to hear that the Duke himself said such a thing. Lifia goes on, explaining how lately her father has been racking his brain to prepare strategies for his next meeting with Kai. The implication is clear. Without intense preparation, the Duke can't even keep up a conversation with him. On top of that, her father's smile completely vanishes whenever Kai is mentioned, suggesting something about him truly shook the Duke. Impressed, Marie declares that if Kai made even Lifia's father feel that way, he must be a true monster. She then comments on the fact that both of their younger sisters were saved by someone truly unbelievable. Lifia agrees, suggesting that only someone like the man in black, a man who makes nobles feel inferior, could have saved Karen and Nina. Which leads Marie to ask if Lifia truly believes Kai is part of Vertar, guessing she must have her own suspicions. But Lifia answers seriously, stating that her father ordered her to never do anything that would make Kai an enemy of their family. So even if she has an idea, she can't say it, and if he really is from Vertar, that complicates everything even more. Lifia does offer one observation. During their conversation, Kai seemed happier with the money than with the family seal. This is especially strange considering the seal functions as a permanent guarantee of her family's support, something anyone would envy. Still, Marie considers that if Kai is from Vertar, he already has the Emperor's backing, which would make it less strange that he'd prefer cold hard cash. But Lifia believes he was happy with the money for a different reason. It would allow him to help more people in need. That conclusion leaves Marie utterly confused. So Lifia explains her logic. A person with such impressive weapons and armor clearly isn't struggling for money himself. Following that reasoning, Marie concludes that House Ansage should probably offer a large sum of money as well. What's odd, though, is that Nina had suggested the exact same thing. Lifia just smiles, commenting that Nina must be a very perceptive girl. To that, Marie retorts that Lifia is in no position to be teasing anyone else. After all, it's painfully obvious how much she likes Kai herself. Panicking Lifia, Marie threatens to tell the man in black that she's completely in love with him. Meanwhile, somewhere else entirely, an excited Nina says she can hardly wait to finally meet their benefactor. She finds it strange that even with his distinctive equipment, they still haven't been able to find him. In fact, she admits she was worried, thinking Kai might have been reprimanded for using the universal elixir on her. Noticing her guilt, Karen assures her that Kai would probably scold her for thinking that way. She recalls his exact words. Instead of worrying about him, he would be happier if Nina used her new freedom to enjoy all the things she never could before. Overwhelmed with relief, Nina thanks Karen for the news. Karen explains that Kai never regretted his choices. He was only worried that someone else might feel guilty. That stubborn personality suits him perfectly, and Nina has to agree he's the type who would never back down, which makes her wonder. So she asks Karen if she knows how long Kai plans on staying in the city. Since he still has business to attend to, Karen confirms he should be around for quite a while. Her admiration growing by the second, Nina can't help but whisper that he's absolutely incredible. Seeing that intense spark in her friend's eyes, Karen decides to share a little secret. She reveals that Kai often has lunch at an inn called LD, preferring simple, everyday meals. LD Inn, the name echoes in Nina's mind as a plan begins to form. Instantly reading her expression, Karen asks if she's actually planning to go there. Nina desperately denies it, insisting she couldn't possibly show up without properly thanking him first. And yet, in the very next second, she sprints away, leaving a stunned Karen in her dust. Karen just watches her go, wondering if she really just got ditched. Meanwhile, as Kai walks through the city, he finds himself approaching that very same inn. But inside, Nina is already there, asking the owner what time a certain mysterious knight usually arrives. When the owner hesitates, her guard steps forward, applying some serious pressure to get the information. Under the threat, the owner finally cracks, revealing that Kai usually shows up right around this time. From outside, Kai watches the whole scene unfold, his plans for a quiet meal evaporating as he realizes the merchant is being harassed. Forced to cooperate, the owner points to a specific table, explaining that's where Kai always sits. Unsatisfied, Nina presses on, now asking what he usually orders. The flustered owner explains there's no fixed dish. The knight just orders whatever he's in the mood for. So she asks what he ordered last time, and the owner points to yesterday's special on the menu. With a flash of determination, Nina immediately orders that exact same dish. Still watching from a distance, Kai thinks it might just be better to skip lunch today. But he can't just ignore the fact that the owner, who's always been good to him, is being pressured. And so, hoping the arrival of another customer will diffuse the tension, Kai decides to head inside. The moment he steps through the door, every head in the room, Nina's, her guards, and the owner, snaps in his direction. Despite knowing exactly what's going on, Kai decides his best move is to pretend he saw nothing. He just doesn't get it, nervously wondering why the entire inn went silent the moment he walked in. Nina, on the other hand, maintains perfect composure, signaling for her guard to stay put. As she starts walking towards him, a confused Kai desperately tries to send a silent plea for help to the inn owner. The owner gets the message, giving Kai a subtle nod of thanks and promising a free meal for his trouble. But now, standing right in front of him, all of Nina's composure crumbles as she blushes, barely able to speak. This just leaves Kai even more confused, having no idea what this girl could possibly want from him. Her face flushed with a mix of hope and embarrassment, she finally asks, "Do you remember me?" That's when it hits him, and Kai is completely stunned to realize the girl standing before him is Nina. He quickly recovers, assuring her that he does remember, and adding that he's happy to see she's doing well. Visibly moved, Nina confesses she's also incredibly happy to see that he is okay. Kai then turns to her guard, clarifying that he was the one who asked the owner to keep his visits a secret. Realizing her mistake, the guard immediately apologizes to the merchant for her inappropriate behavior. The owner quickly smooths things over, insisting there's no problem and he's just grateful for their understanding. With the situation resolved, Kai turns back to Nina, admitting her clothes are so different he didn't recognize her at first. A fresh blush creeps up her neck as she asks him if the new look suits her. Kai replies that a look like this will suit her even more when she's a little older. But to his surprise, she beams with pure joy, thanking him profusely for the compliment. On top of that, he notes that he had no idea she was connected to the Holy Church. His surprise makes Nina both happy and a little bit embarrassed. All the while, her guard watches from the sidelines, completely shocked by how casual their conversation is. Then, Kai remembers to ask the one question that truly matters. How has her eyesight been? She happily exclaims that it's perfect, all thanks to him, getting so excited she invades his personal space. Kai is a bit startled by her sudden intensity, but Nina is simply overjoyed to finally be speaking with her savior. To prove it, she flawlessly identifies the hand gestures he makes, showing her vision is perfect. Seeing that she can recognize everything without a single issue, a wave of genuine relief washes over Kai. Overcome with emotion, Nina tells him that now, for the first time, she can truly say she's the happiest person in the world. Hearing the years of hardship in her voice, Kai tells her she doesn't have to carry that weight anymore. From now on, he says, she should hold her head high and enjoy every sight the world has to offer. Filled with new motivation from his words, Nina promises that she will do her absolute best. And at that exact moment, the inn owner returns with their food, thanking them both for waiting. As Nina thanks Kai for the meal, her eyes go wide at the mountain of food set before her. Yet while her guard also gives thanks, Nina calmly confirms that yes, she ordered it herself. She explains that even though it's an adult's portion, she simply wanted to eat the exact same thing as him. That's when it hits Kai, she's genuinely trying to be just like him. Is this what admiration does to a person? Accepting her heartfelt reason, he tells her not to worry. If she can't finish it, he and the guard will gladly help out. Visibly relieved, Nina thanks him for being so considerate. Kai then urges her to go ahead and start eating without waiting for his own food to arrive. After all, he knows her time outside is limited, and it would be a shame to let such a good meal get cold. The very moment they take their first bite, Nina's face lights up as she exclaims how delicious it is. And her guard immediately agrees, an expression of pure bliss washing over her face. Seeing their reaction, a satisfied Kai proudly confirms that the food here really is fantastic. But the inn owner finds his pride a little strange, asking why Kai's acting so proud of his food. He follows this up by slamming Kai's drink down with such force that Kai can't help but complain about the aggressive service. Watching their easy banter, Nina smiles, commenting that Kai and the merchant must be very close. And while Kai tries to play it off, the owner freely admits that Kai has never once told him who he really is. To this, Nina remarks that it must be difficult dealing with someone so mysterious. The owner agrees a little too enthusiastically before catching himself and quickly shifting to a more formal tone. At this, the guard chimes in, stating that as long as Nina isn't bothered by it, she can simply ignore his informal speech. But Nina just smiles, saying she doesn't mind at all. In fact, she'd prefer he speak casually with her, just as he does with Kai. This suggestion sends the inn owner into a full-blown panic as he practically begs to be spared. Kai finds his friend's nervous breakdown hilarious, only for the owner to retort that he's the normal one here, not Kai. Just as their argument picks up steam, however, Nina hesitantly interrupts them. There's something important she needs to ask him. Knowing her time is short, she asks if they can set a specific day and time for her to visit and offer a proper thank you. Kai is clearly taken aback, and sensing the sudden shift in tension, the inn owner offers to give them some privacy. His first question is whether she already knows where he lives, to which she apologizes in case that's a problem. Now he's intrigued. How on earth did she find out about the villa he was just given? He explains that if she's going to visit, it has to be on one of his days off, since he's busy all week. Nina understands completely and suggests this coming Sunday, around noon. Kai agrees to the time but has one critical follow-up question. Who, exactly, will be visiting? Her answer, her father, her mother, her older sister, and herself, plus a few guards. Kai is utterly floored. Her entire family plans to personally visit his home? And in that moment, he starts to realize that Nina's family might be far more powerful than he ever imagined. Seeing her confusion at his stunned silence, he finally explains that he'd prefer her parents didn't come. She's clearly surprised, so Kai quickly clarifies that he doesn't want the visit to become overly formal or attract unwanted attention. In fact, he'd much prefer her parents prioritize their important work, since it would be a problem if something happened while they were away. Even as her guard thanks him for the meal, Nina still tries to insist that her parents should be there. But Kai holds his ground, reiterating that a normal thank you is more than enough, and he isn't asking her to come alone. He then puts the question to her directly. Is the problem that her family doesn't trust her to visit with only her attendants? Nina immediately denies it, insisting that's not the case at all. With that, Kai decides to end the discussion, leaving the task of informing her superiors to the bodyguard. The guard confirms this was her plan all along, prompting a grateful thank you from Kai. A wave of relief washes over him. For once, everything is going smoothly. Having finished her meal, Nina politely says her goodbyes, adding that she hopes to see him again soon. But the moment Nina and her guard are out the door, Kai lets out a long, heavy sigh of exhaustion. Just then, the inn owner finally brings his plate, questioning if Kai is really the one who has a right to be tired here. Kai just complains that dealing with that group would leave anyone completely drained. Yet the merchant, looking even more ragged, makes it clear that he was the one who truly suffered the most. He admits that while he always knew Kai wasn't ordinary, he never imagined he could face the Holy Church itself as an equal. Hearing that, Kai can only think to himself, if only that were true, this would all be so much easier. Seeing his friend staring blankly into space, the owner tells him he can finally drop the act now that they're gone. Kai notes that even after figuring everything out, the inn owner hasn't changed how he treats him one bit. To which the owner replies that acting normal is probably better for Kai, too, and Kai has to admit that it really does help. He then comments on just how frightening that bodyguard was, thinking she must be one of the best. This sets the inn owner off again, complaining that Kai should have warned him about his connection to Nina, but all Kai can offer is an apology. The merchant explains that Kai himself heard the guards claim they went easy on him. That particular phrasing, however, strikes Kai as incredibly strange. So the owner clarifies. While he was stalling in his confusion, Nina was stuck outside with only a limited time to eat. Because of that, he now understands the guard's firm attitude was completely justified. She was just making sure Nina got her meal on time. And as the full situation dawns on him, Kai can only reflect that being a bodyguard is a tough job, always caught in the crossfire. The inn owner remarks on hearing Kai's clever defense of the woman, something about protecting her public image. But Kai just laughs, admitting he doesn't actually understand any of that and simply said what sounded plausible. This casual dismissal makes the owner realize that if Kai can't even comprehend such concerns, he must be in a position where he never has to. And that logic leads to a shocking thought. What if Kai is somehow ranked even higher than a bishop? Annoyed and completely overwhelmed by the implications, the inn owner irritably ends the conversation right there. Later, in their carriage, Nina happily mentions how glad she was to eat the same meal as Kai. Her guard can only agree that Shikoku is without a doubt a powerful man. Yet Nina clarifies that she was asking what he's like on the inside, as a person. The guard apologizes, explaining she couldn't properly gauge his character because she was being watched the whole time. Surveillance? Nina is startled to learn she was under observation. It was a test, the guard explains, since people often let their guard down while eating. She then states gravely that as Nina's escorts, they already failed once by letting her get kidnapped. And on top of that, they failed to even notice Shikoku's presence, a mistake the guard finds truly unforgivable. Nina gently suggests that maybe Shikoku just has a very subtle presence. But the guard immediately dismisses this, insisting it can only mean a massive difference in their skill levels. She even speculates that Shikoku might have predicted the entire conflict with the merchant, since every detail was too perfect to be a coincidence. Which means he either had prior information about their destination, or he possesses an extraordinary ability to read any situation. While Nina agrees to report everything to her father, the guard sees she's also dwelling on his strange request for gratitude. The guard has to admit that particular detail caught her attention as well. After all, someone in Shikoku's position would never waste a chance to forge a connection with Nina's powerful parents. It's even stranger when you consider he was in the perfect position to demand a favor in return for his help. Nina recalls his claim of not liking attention, but now she realizes it was probably just an excuse. Her guard agrees, pointing out that while a commoner might say that, Shikoku's natural interaction with Nina proves otherwise. Plus, with the persistent rumors of him belonging to Vertar, he is almost certainly used to dealing with high-ranking people. With a growing sense of unease, Nina starts to suspect a serious problem might be brewing within the Great Cathedral. The guard can't be sure, but she's convinced Shikoku must have an important reason for his request. He is simply not the type of man to say he'd prefer her parents not come for some trivial reason. That's why they must consult Nina's father immediately, and the guard asks for permission to speed up the carriage. Nina gives the okay, and her guard orders the coachman to race ahead as fast as possible. Sometime later, Nina points out that her sister Marie's voice and even her legs are trembling with nerves. Marie struggles to pull herself together, completely shaken by Shikoku's specific request for their parents not to come. Between the Vertar rumors and his other oddities, she can't begin to figure out his true motive. Trying to calm her down, Nina assures her that everything is fine because Shikoku is a truly wonderful person. But this cheerful response only makes Marie panic, wondering if her sister is actively trying to get her killed. To make a good impression, she thinks it would be best to present a more adapted, refined version of herself. Nina just smiles warmly, saying she likes the real Marie just the way she is. Deeply touched, Marie accepts her sister's words and promises to take them to heart. Changing the subject, she has to acknowledge that Shikoku really is an incredible man. Based on how busy he seemed, she figures he must be investigating all sorts of things behind the scenes. Nina briefly wonders how he gets all his information, but quickly decides it's probably better not to know. Marie then issues a stern warning. If they dig too deep into Kai's business, he might start seeing them as enemies. And in the worst-case scenario, he could decide they're not worth the trouble and simply cut all ties with them. Contemplating this, Marie concludes that from any angle, Shikoku is a true monster. She then leans in to add that for all they know, he could be listening to their conversation right now. No sooner do the words leave her mouth than they hear footsteps from above, realizing in shock that someone is on the ceiling. A nervous Nina calls out to Marie as the footsteps continue to pace right over their heads. Marie desperately tries to rationalize it as just an animal, remembering a similar incident from the past. But Nina is still uneasy, pointing out that the footsteps started the exact moment they were talking about him. Marie tries to reassure them both, arguing that Kai is kind and would only be watching them to intervene if something happened. Trying to dispel the tension, she reminds Nina that there are guards at the main gate, so no one could have just walked in. On the day of the meeting, Kai is back at the inn, where the owner comments that if he were Kai, he'd be too busy to go out. But Kai is unconcerned, having already ensured Nina's powerful parents won't be coming. He has mentally reviewed their first meeting and is fully prepared for everything to go according to his plan. In fact, the only thing that still worries him is having to speak with Nina's sister, Marie, for the first time. If things get too complicated, his simple backup plan is to throw all the responsibility onto Nina. Yet he admits to himself there was another, more important reason he came to the inn on this crucial day. Just then, the inn owner notices he's deep in thought and asks if something is on his mind. That's when Kai reveals that a few days ago, Duke de Gote, Karen, and Lifia's father assigned a new live-in maid to manage his property. While complaining to the inn owner, Kai explains that his live-in maid's formal distance makes his own estate feel incredibly lonely. But as he talks, he realizes the inn itself is much busier than before, with customers and employees bustling all around. With a beaming smile, the inn owner tells Kai this boom in business is all thanks to him. After all, ever since Nina regained her sight, she's been making more public appearances, drawing in crowds. Kai has to agree, thinking to himself that it's already easy to see how beautiful she's destined to become. Just then, the merchant's expression shifts, remembering he has something important to give Kai. That's when he brings up a new religious group that has appeared out of nowhere, one that's stirring up conflict with Nina's holy church. In fact, the owner is certain this serious matter is exactly what Kai came here to investigate all along. He's even overheard customers whispering rumors that the new group is calling the Holy Church's archbishops corrupt. It sounds like a clear attempt to cause an internal split and weaken the influence of the Ansage family. Of course, the inn owner assumes Kai must already know all this, given the kind of information he can usually access. So when Kai asks what would happen if he didn't know, the owner just jokes that his response is typical of someone who already understands everything. Though the comment leaves him confused, Kai decides to set the matter aside for the time being. He figures the Holy Church should be more than capable of handling a problem like this on its own. The church would never let its prestige be destroyed, but the owner quickly warns him that the situation is a huge mess. He explains that for a group that appeared from nothing, they're gaining strength far too quickly. Yet Kai maintains his calm, stating the church still has enough power and recognition to deal with the threat. The inn owner, however, interprets this composure differently, asking if Kai has perhaps already started acting behind the scenes. It takes a moment for Kai to understand the owner's look, but he soon realizes the man simply doesn't believe his denials. Deciding to change the subject, Kai admits that he at least learned some useful things from their conversation. His next step, he decides, is to ask Nina what she knows about the whole affair. After all, her family would be far more willing to consult with her than to trust him directly. He offers a generous 10,000 regal for the bill and the information, but the inn owner tells him not to be ridiculous. Since Kai was the one who brought Nina there in the first place, the owner declares the meal is on the house. Ecstatic about the news, Kai realizes what a great help this is. And so he leaves the inn satisfied and with a full stomach, a free meal his reward for helping their business. But back at his estate, his housekeeper finds it strange that he's wearing full armor just to meet Lady Nina and Lady Marie. Kai simply calls it a precaution, reasoning that one never knows what might happen. She immediately questions this, asking if he wouldn't be stronger using his own hands rather than relying on the armor. This is the very same maid he'd complained about earlier, the one who has lately been making him nervous. Completely taken aback by her comment, Kai demands to know where she could have possibly heard that. She replies casually that it was from Lord Dagote, assuring him the information is strictly internal. Kai has no choice but to accept her explanation, secretly glad his helmet is hiding his sudden embarrassment. Changing the topic, the maid confirms Nina and Marie have arrived and asks where he would like them to be escorted. She suggests either the office or the reception room, assuring him that both are ready. Kai decides on the office, a choice the maid immediately accepts with calm respect. But then she asks what he would like to do about the guards who will be accompanying Nina and Marie. He thinks for a moment, then suggests they wait somewhere near the office, since he doesn't want to be watched. The maid agrees, so Kai adds that the guards should be allowed to move freely to keep them from getting bored. This decision, however, clearly surprises the maid, who asks if he is absolutely sure. Kai can't help but notice she seems shaken by his order, and he begins to worry that it's a bad sign. Trying to diffuse the tension, he suggests they share the sweets that Karen brought with the family seal. He even adds that they're very good, so it would be a nice gesture for their guests. But the maid is only confused by his suggestion, and Kai has no idea why. She apologizes awkwardly, asking what he meant, becoming visibly embarrassed by the whole situation. And after she tells him the price, Kai is utterly shocked that simple sweets could cost so much. That's when he nervously asks about the gemstone ring he also received as a reward. His maid estimates the ring is worth somewhere between 5 and 10 million regal. Completely stunned, Kai struggles to process the absurd value of the gift. Seeing his reaction, the maid misinterprets his shock as disappointment, asking if she should discreetly inform the Duke the reward was insufficient. In truth, the mere idea of casually receiving something so expensive is just giving him a massive headache. He quickly clarifies, asking if he really comes across as that greedy. The maid calmly explains that for a noble like the Duke, ensuring a reward is sufficient is simply a matter of honor. This prompts him to ask a strange question. Admitting he feels guilty for always receiving gifts and wants, for once, to give her something in return. Before Nina and Marie arrive, Kai asks the maid to follow the plan he laid out for her. The maid finds Kai's casual attitude almost disrespectful. But it's exactly what she'd expect from someone connected to Vertar. She greets Nina and Marie by name, leading them inside as the presence of their escort makes the meeting feel incredibly important. Upon entering, Nina's vice-captain of the guard is surprised to find the maid still serving here. The maid explains that Kai took her situation into consideration when the villa was granted to him. The vice-captain finds that choice strange, and the maid confirms that he could have easily put someone more competent in her place. But the maid argues that since she had no connection to Shikoku, he had no way to evaluate her abilities in the first place. The vice-captain reminds her that they are talking about him, so anything is possible. The maid pauses for a moment. She concludes they'll just go in circles trying to understand the protagonist's motives, and the vice-captain agrees. The maid explains that Shikoku is seen as a reserved man who gives little information, and everyone has been forbidden from investigating him. She admits to being more tense than anyone, since even the powerful Lord Dagode bows his head to Kai. The vice-captain understands and asks if Kai simply said there was no need for their guards. The maid confirms that Kai dismissed the guards, saying they'd only make things feel stuffy. The vice captain interprets this as an indirect challenge. If anyone wants to come after him, they're welcome to try. Still, she admits that being inside his territory is probably the safest place they could be. The vice captain then asks for the maid's opinion on what Shikoku meant by letting the guards do as they wished. The nervous maid warns that she can't be held responsible for her words, but agrees to share her speculation. She explains that she doesn't believe Kai simply allowed the guards to rest or wander aimlessly. To her, that interpretation is incomplete, because protecting their masters is a guard's most important duty. Shikoku would never order them to abandon that role. The maid believes that when Kai told the guards to do as they wished, he was allowing them to act according to their own abilities and judgment. The vice captain understands this to mean that from Shikoku's perspective, he truly doesn't depend on them for anything, but the maid clarifies it might not be a lack of trust, but a way to ensure they don't rely too much on his help. Therefore, if they want to protect Nina and Marie, they need to develop a self-reliant mindset on their own. Meanwhile, Nina finds the sweets delicious, as the maid outside emphasizes that her interpretation is just a guess. Kai is internally bewildered, unable to understand why his normal comment about letting the guards act freely is being interpreted as some profound order. The heavy atmosphere continues until Marie apologizes and asks how she can become more like him. She wants to learn how to see beyond situations and predict how her actions will affect everyone around her. Kai is even more lost by her question. He repeats her words about seeing beyond and adjusting her conduct, completely baffled. Marie simply confirms that's exactly what she meant. Kai starts panicking inside, having hoped for a better explanation instead of a simple yes. Not knowing how to answer, Kai desperately looks at Nina for help, wondering what he should do. He tries to clarify there's been a misunderstanding, stating that he's not seeing beyond anything. Kai just wanted Marie to relax to make the conversation easier, since they hadn't even reached the main topic yet. Nina then warns her sister that if she keeps acting this way, she might damage her own dignity. With the atmosphere growing stranger, Kai realizes the entire mood of the meeting is about to collapse. Trying to follow the twisted logic, Kai fumbles and says that if Marie thinks it's bad for her dignity, then that kind of thing can happen. Nina, however, just enjoys her sister's flustered reaction and comments that she seems to have won their little bet. Meanwhile, Kai is completely exhausted, unable to comprehend how the conversation got to this point. He's surprised when Marie's demeanor completely changes from one moment to the next. More confidently, Marie says she will believe in Shikoku and try to relax, asking him not to see it as bad manners. Marie attempts to finally start thanking him, but Kai quickly interrupts her before she can continue. He says there's something else he wants to discuss, trying to steer the conversation towards the new religious group. Nina finds the sudden change of subject strange. Kai clarifies that he's referring to the new group causing conflict with the Holy Church. He asks if everything is alright on that front. Nina asks if Kai really doesn't mind discussing that topic first. He happily confirms, saying thanks can wait, but he'd rather hear about the new religious group now. Hearing this, Nina sincerely thanks him. This just leaves Kai even more confused, as he has no idea why she is thanking him. Marie interprets his attitude in yet another profound way, wondering just how far into the future Shikoku can truly see. While Kai finds their reaction strange, Nina prepares to explain the situation. Kai tells her he's counting on her. Because of the threat, they decided to act against the group before it grows any stronger. Marie clarifies the real issue. It's not simply a matter of other beliefs, but a deliberate attack by this new group to tarnish the Holy Church's name. So to counter them, she reveals their bold trap. They've leaked information that the entire Anzaj family will be away from the Great Cathedral that day. This is an unprecedented move, marking the first time in the Holy Church's long history that all the Anzaj would be absent at once. Yet Kai's immediate concern is for Nina's parents, and he confirms with Marie that they remain at the cathedral, safe with extra guards and reinforced security. With that assurance, Nina turns to Shikoku, asking if he also believes everything will be resolved safely. His response is surprisingly pragmatic. Even if the enemy doesn't act today, simply keeping their guard up is what will ensure their safety. This simple, direct acknowledgement of their efforts leaves both Nina and Marie completely surprised. And with a smile, Kai simply asks them to do that for him, brushing it off as if it were nothing major. But back at the Great Cathedral, a very different mood is setting in, as some church members question whether they should really just stand by and do nothing. They fear this inaction will only embolden the new religious group, and that the leader's absence will seriously damage the church's reputation. Even the religious leader acknowledges their concerns, admitting he too feels guilty for being unable to fulfill his usual duties. However, he makes one thing absolutely clear. They have decided to trust Shikoku's words, and there will be no going back on that decision.